You know, there's a lot to like about this picture. I think I'm going to do a Power Rangers video this time. And I'm going to talk about the new one. So, let's just jump right into it. So, before I rewatched this movie, I had only seen it once in theaters when it came out. So, all the way back in like the fall of 2017. So, it's been a while since I had seen the movie. The things I could remember the most is that I really enjoyed it. I thought the characters were all great. I thought the action was all great. And, I really enjoyed seeing it in theaters. But again, I had only seen it once. In terms of my history with the Power Rangers, I never, watched the original show on TV. That was on way before I was born. We weren't really watching a lot of TV growing up. So the Power Rangers show that I watched the most as a kid, and the one that I remember the most and enjoyed the most, was probably Dino Thunder. And that was really cool because in that show, Tommy came back as this mentor character, and I knew Tommy from the original Power Rangers because I had seen the 1995 Power Rangers movie. And so I knew who they were, and it was cool to see Tommy come back, and I liked the story arcs of Dino Thunder and everything, and it's very, had a lot of callbacks to Mighty Morphin, but I didn't really know much about the show, and besides a few clips, I haven't really watched the original show, so I don't really know how this movie compares to, how the show was, or, obviously the show is made for kids, so the movie has to be made for teenagers and adults. So I went in with mostly a clean slate. It was I'm expecting people in outfits kicking butt and being cool and spouting out random one-liners. And that's exactly what this movie delivered, so let's get into the review. Right away, we're introduced into this, after a battle scene. And you see Bryan Cranston's character playing Zordon, and he's he buries the power coins, and he drops the meteor that kills the dinosaurs to stop Rita. And the thing that I wanted to point out is I really liked Zordon's character, even though you don't get to see too much of him in this opening scene, and that kind of opens up that a lot of the characters in this movie are very good, which I'll talk about more later. But the thing that really drew my attention was that Zordon and the Yellow Ranger, when the Yellow Ranger powers down, appeared to be different species. And that implies that this group of Power Rangers that Zordon was leading were collected from all over the universe, or just all over the galaxy, or whatever. And that's a very interesting, thing, a little detail to add in there. So it would have been interesting to see more about maybe his team, and maybe more about, the history of where they got the power. Because in the show, it was implied that Zordon himself created the Power Rangers and the powers and all that stuff. But it's here, it's they're just members of the Power Rangers team. So it'd be a little more interesting to maybe go into the backstory of how these powers came to existence in the first place. But then, after Zordon puts the crystals in the ground and says, "Only find those who are worthy," apparently no one else was worthy for 65 million years. Maybe it was because the crystals were buried underground and no one could get to them to be worthy, or it was you just had to know where they were, like Billy did, to be worthy, or it's maybe because it's not like they're the Green Lantern rings flying around seeking out the people who are worthy. They were just buried underground. It was are you worthy? Is it that when you pick up the coin you become worthy, or is it more you can only get the coin if you are worthy, or it kind of draws you to the area when they're gonna be revealed? So, as I said, I really enjoyed the characters of this movie. I really thought that all the main Power Rangers, and Alpha, and Zordon, and Rita, I really felt like everyone who was a main character and had focus on them was really well developed, and they were really well executed, and these didn't just feel like a bunch of heroes that all come together to save the world. No, it's these are just kids. These are teenagers. They're not heroes. They're just troubled people trying to find their way in the universe, and while they ultimately do the right thing, they may not know how at first, and that's where Zordon and Alpha come in as their mentors to teach them how to get from point A to point B and do the right thing. And you can tell that they have good character because when they get these amazing powers, yeah, they're really like into it and they're jumping all over, like, you know, and learning all their stuff. But they don't go out and like start immediately like trying to rob banks. They don't try to like beat up their bullies. Like Billy unintentionally beats up his bully, but his bully basically beat himself up because he tries to like headbutt Billy, and Billy's strong now, so it's basically like headbutting a wall as hard as you can. After they discover the stones and the rock, like I said, it was like apparently they were the first people to be, like maybe it was the first group of people to be worthy in 65 million years, or maybe they just happened to find the stones or whatever and became worthy. Whatever. As they're fleeing the security, they get hit by a train. And I'm alright with them surviving that because it's like, well, the stones like gave them the superpowers, so obviously they're more durable now and they can survive stuff like that. But my question is like, did it also take them to their home and just tuck them into bed? Because they're still wearing the same clothes that got all like messed up, but it's like they're just in their house. It's like, how does the stones know which house is theirs? Did they just like kind of like after getting hit by the train all just collectively stand up in a zombie like state and just like slowly walk back to their individual houses and collapse in bed? And then the other thing, is, you know, it's a good thing that Rita didn't just wake up any time before the stones were found, or otherwise the movie would have been over. It's like, oh, there's Rita. Yep, and there goes the Zeo crystal. Great. And one of the questions I had about that was, well, maybe she was woken up because the other stones were activated, and it's like because the 5 power coins were activated, it activated her coin, which like kind of brought her back. It never really explains how Rita was able to survive being hit by a meteor and like buried underwater for like 65 million years. It also doesn't explain why after 65 million years of apparently being underwater, she ends up in a fisher net and is brought up to the surface. It's all kind of weird. It's like, okay, wouldn't she be like dinosaur bones? Wouldn't she be like really buried under rock or like in a magma pit somewhere? And then the biggest question that I have is, it's like, why does Billy's mom never ask about the car that he borrowed without her permission that got completely wrecked by the train? Wouldn't you ask, hey, where's my car? Oh yeah, it got hit by a train. Why? But no, apparently she just never questions where her car went. So I really like the montages throughout the film of the 5 of them kind of discovering their new abilities and going through their training. And it's very interesting because it's like the way they, first of all, like learning about their powers is very reminiscent of like what most teenagers would do if they suddenly woke up and had like super strength and like all these powers. And it's like, at first you'd be like, whoa, this is awesome. And then another part of you'd be like, all right, well, what is the limits of what I can do? Like, am I like strong enough to throw a car, or am I just strong enough to lift the car? And so I really liked how they like had a creative way of like showing that, of like testing their limits and figuring out what they can do. And then they meet Alpha 5, and he awakens Zordon again, and they go into their training regiment. And I guess the only question I have about that is, it's like they have 11 days. Okay, 11 days is a pretty short amount of time, but it's doable if you work around the clock to get to where you need to be. But it's like they don't work around the clock. They work for maybe like an hour or 2 every day after school, because it's like you still see them going to school, you still see them going home to their families. Wait, you guys have 11 days to fight a fully trained, fully capable Power Ranger killer, and you guys are just like treating this like a after-school club. It's like, you guys gotta buckle down. I understand you have lives to live and people are gonna make questions if you don't come home or go to school, but it's like, this is the fate of the universe on your hands. It doesn't matter at this point. You can explain all that later. In addition to the training montages, I really enjoyed the montage where they're sitting around the campfire and they're all like, getting closer together and telling each other about themselves and who they are, and like just as the group, even in this short amount of time, legitimately come together and become friends. Billy morphs because he like kind of figures out that it's because you have to be selfless and fight for the group rather than for yourself. But then he like immediately forgets how to morph, and it's like, okay, Billy's really smart, and he said in the beginning he remembers a lot of things. Is it implying that Billy didn't know how he morphed, or is it implying that he forgot how he morphed? Because he clearly doesn't forget things, and I feel like it's a pretty easy thing to learn. And then immediately after that, when he couldn't like morph back, Zordon is just way too dismissive about sending away the saviors of the universe. It's like, dude, I understand these kids aren't living up to your like really high expectations because they're kids. But it's like, come on, dude. You are way too mean and way too dismissive of these guys to be like, get out of here. You can't do it. And it's like, Rita's like right around the corner. Maybe you should not kick us out. So this movie, while I really enjoyed it, again raises another question that like it's just so like just like out of the blue for me. Is this like, why is Rita like dripping wet through this whole movie? Like, you see her when she comes out of the water, she's like the weird like zombie in the fish boat. That's fine. Then maybe when she's like huddled around the fire and she attacks the homeless guy for his golden teeth. But then when she shows up at the jewelry store, she's still like wet as if she just like came out of the ocean. And it's like, that was days ago. Do you just not dry off? And then every time she's like hiding in the ceiling, and it's like the tell that she's coming to get you is like water starts dripping on you, and you're like, oh no, it's like, why is she so like wet? That's just, it's like, did you not dry off enough after your shower? Speaking of Rita, the other thing is that she finds Trinity's house and she like attacks her, but it's like, how did you find this house? Do you know where the other Rangers are? Why don't you just attack them and kill them now while they're not all together? But then she doesn't. She just shows up to like mess with her for a bit. And Trinity's parents never check on Trini after they hear this like all this like destruction in Trinity's room and everything. And then all the Power Rangers go and try to attack Rita, and that goes poorly. And she drops Billy in the water, and he drowns like instantly. And it's like, hold on, you guys held your breath for like 10 minutes before when you were swimming down to Zordon's lair. The multiple times you do that. And then after they get Billy out of the water, they go back to Zordon's lair and swim with a drowned Billy underwater for like 5 minutes. I understand you wanted to have the emotional moment where Zordon chooses to have Billy go through instead of himself, but it's like, why couldn't Rita have just killed Billy a normal way instead of having him stupid drown so he could come back to life? And it's like, no, couldn't you just have Rita kill him, and then they like use the morphing grid to bring Billy back through? And it's like very emotional then, because it's like, yeah, Billy's definitely dead. He didn't just drown instantly for no reason. So a lot of people were complaining that there wasn't enough of the Power Rangers in this movie, because it's like they only morphed at the very end, and then there was only like 15 or like 20 minutes of them actually being the Power Rangers. But I actually feel differently about that, because this was more about the journey of the characters and like learning to know who these people are and learning to know what they stand for, and then the morphing is really well earned, and when they finally do morph, it's well justified. Right after they morph, it's like all my favorite scenes are like right after that, because it's like they go outside, they're having all the epic fights with the putties, they're throwing one-liners around, they're like, using all their training, and they're just kicking so much butt. And then they call the Zords, and they like jump in the Zords, and it's immediately followed by like, a bit of the Power Rangers theme song, and you're just like, yes! And like when I saw that in theaters, it was like, I lost my mind. I was like, this is the best. And watching it again, it still holds up. It still gets you excited. You're still just like, yes, go get him. Go beat up Rita. The one thing I was disappointed with in the Zords fighting Goldar scene is that, like, there's this part where they're all, like, in a line, like, trying to stop Goldar from getting to the Zeo crystal, and, like, you know, they're basically, like, on fire because there's molten golden monsters attacking them, and Kimberly is, like, has some line about how it's getting too hot in here, and I'm sitting there like, that would have been a perfect callback to the original movie where Kimberly in that movie is getting attacked by Ivan Ooze's lightning, and she's like, I'm burning up in here. That would have been a perfect chance for a callback to that movie. And then, you know, the rest of the movie, like the Megazord fight, is pretty cool, but it's just a bunch of slow moving action that we had already seen. It's like they basically took the action we already saw and just slowed it all down to giant robot status. So, you know, it was cool, but it was just a regular fight scene for me. So, in conclusion, I really enjoyed this movie even on the second time around. You know, it was still a very good experience, and I really enjoyed it. So, if you like the Power Rangers, or, you know, you liked anything related to it, like, you're gonna like this movie. It's a fairly good movie, and even if you don't like the Power Rangers or anything, and you just like action movies, this is a really good action movie too. It's a good standalone movie, and I definitely think that it's worth the watch. Thank you all so much for watching the video. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a like and a comment, and be sure to subscribe if you really enjoyed it. The next movie I'll be reviewing is Zootopia. It was one of my all-time favorite movies, and it was definitely my favorite movie of 2016. I believe that came out the same year as one of the Star Wars movies, so that's saying a lot. And, yeah, it should be very interesting to go back and revisit that. Hold on. Getting a call. What the hell? Wait a minute. I recognize that number. Must have taken my number again. Hello?
I thought you might need my help on the review.
Well, you're too late. I already finished the review.
What? What do you mean it's already finished? Well, what are you reviewing next week?
I'm not telling you what we're reviewing next week, because if I tell you, you're gonna just try to ruin the review.
Don't make me do something you're gonna regret.
Yeah, I don't take your threats seriously. When will you ever learn? Take care.
He hung up on me. I'll teach him. But later. I guess. I know where he is. He's never going anywhere.